What is up, everybody? I hope you are having a fantastic evening. It is Monday night, just before the scouting combine kicks off this week, and a lot of news I would expect to break out of this out of the scouting combine. I would expect players that are a little bit younger over the next week and a half to start getting signed by their current teams before they hit free agency. So there's going to be a lot of movement coming up, a lot of off-season jockeying, if you will, coming up over the next couple weeks, and it really should begin this week. Maybe potential trade of Matthew Stafford coming up. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about, does it matter that Kyle Shanahan is not showing up at the combine? I got some thoughts on that. Let's get to it next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. Like I said, I hope you're having a fantastic evening. I see you guys jumping in the chat already. Dave Barclay's already here. He says, Jesse, thank you so much for your help and your support. Yeah, brother. I mean, you've supported me like crazy. And I'm all about paying it forward regardless. I help a lot of people out. I see that you've got your channel in here. So go check it out for sure. And the other thing is this, Dave, like, I know that you said, oh, I'm going to get better at it. And what, all of it's learning, man. The first 30 videos should be so crappy. And that's how you learn. That's to be expected. God, I could only imagine what watching my first videos would be like. Unfortunately, I don't get to go back and watch those because I lost the channel, but I would like to go check them out. And even today, I mean, there's still, shoot, I'll do a video. I'll end the video and be like, man, I could have been way better. I could have said this differently. I could have articulated this thought a lot better. So it's just the way that it goes. You're always going to be critical of yourself, but putting out content is always a great thing. So Alan, no, I'm not, man. I actually had an opportunity to come and I didn't. Here's the thing is I'm really big on doing things that you say that you're going to do. And right now I'm coaching my son's flag football league. Practices are on Mondays and Wednesdays, games are on Fridays, and this upcoming week is the final week of the season. And then not only that, my son who's in 5th grade, my youngest who's in 5th grade, they've got a thing called Lunch on the Lawn for every grade. They do it basically all the way through grade school, where the parents show up, they have lunch with their kids, and then they can sign them out, take them home early. It's kind of like a special day, really, and it happens one time a year. Well, this is his last Lunch on the Lawn, and then this is the last week of flag football. So for me, I committed to coaching my son. I've got to see that through. I committed to going to his Lunch on the Lawn. It's just more important for me to be a coach to all the kids that I made a commitment to, and also be there for my son. So not going to go, unfortunately, but I wish I could. I think it'd be a cool experience for sure, but it didn't make sense for me to go. So I'll be here. I'll trust everybody else, and hopefully we get some good interviews out of it and get to check it out. I know that you're from there, right? So you can, right? I think so, if I'm not mistaken. You're from there, and I know that it's open to fans as well. You can't interview players per se, but you can go check it out. I'm sure that's a cool experience. So enjoy it. Have a lot of fun, everybody that's there. I know Grant's going for the first time. I think that's pretty cool. Curious to see what his thoughts are. I saw he got himself a little pocket mic and he's ready to go. He was testing things out for some videos. So I'm sure he'll enjoy himself and inform us on what's going on, along with many, many others. But for me, not happening. Let's see. All right. Let's talk about, I know this isn't necessarily 49ers off the bat, but I think that it is important that we talk about the Matthew Stafford situation because this really does impact the NFC West, and ultimately it will impact the 49ers if Matthew Stafford is moved on from it. And I just find the approach of the Rams to be interesting in contrast to the San Francisco 49ers. I personally find it refreshing. I like teams that are willing to take these risks and move on from players maybe a little bit early or just not give in to every player's demand. I also think in this situation that Matthew Stafford isn't being unreasonable. It sounds like he wants around 50 million on a maybe a 2-year deal, fully guaranteed. I don't think that's that crazy, knowing that he's gonna play. He probably thinks he's gonna play 2 more seasons. Maybe he can address it again after 2 seasons if he decides he wants to keep on playing, but he could get more than that. He definitely could, at least a bigger number, as far as the overall AAV. I don't know, like, what he'll get if he hits up the open market, but it does sound like there are teams that are already willing to pay him more than what he's asking for. But the Rams are looking at it saying, "Look, you're often injured, you're getting older. During this season, there were some rough times. Now, obviously, at the tail end of the season and into the playoffs, he looked like Matthew Stafford of old. But early on in the season, he just looked like old Matthew Stafford. So, committing all of that from the Rams, I understand where they're coming from. And I do find it very, very interesting that they're willing to kind of hold his feet to the fire here. I'm curious to see what happens. I think right now, if I had to make a guess, I would say that they do actually move on from Matthew Stafford. I think there's a real scenario where Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, plus whatever picks you get for Matthew Stafford, are enticing, maybe even more enticing than paying Matthew Stafford. I think that's a real possibility. I think that Aaron Rodgers lives near there now. Obviously, Devontae Adams already said he wants to play in the West Coast. You put them in a dome, both of them. I think they would have pretty good success, especially with Sean McVay, a pretty good offensive line. And then also you get extra draft picks for Stafford. But that could be a 1-year solution. Then the Rams next year are right back up against it to where if you sign Stafford for 2 years, gives you a couple years to kind of find that future quarterback. So I don't know. There's a lot at play here. But I think if Matthew Stafford moves on, then that's obviously a good thing for the 49ers because Matthew Stafford is still arguably the best quarterback in the NFC. Now, I think it's harder to make that claim now that Hurts has won a Super Bowl and played really well doing it. But Matthew Stafford in the snow played a pretty damn good game and was this close to beating the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Philadelphia Eagles are way more talented than the Rams, just top to bottom at this stage, way more talented. Now, I think the Rams are ascending. They've got a lot of young players. We'll see, where they're at in a year or two if they can close that gap. But I think if you pull Matthew Stafford away from the Rams team, that's really good for the 49ers. I think the 49ers have a pretty good opportunity to win the NFC West regardless, just because I think they're still just as talented as the Rams, if not maybe a little bit more. And on top of that, they've got a really easy schedule. So I think either way, the 49ers could win the NFC West. I think it gets a heck of a lot easier if Matthew Stafford's no longer there. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is better than Stafford from a career aspect. But right now, I think it's pretty clear that Matthew Stafford is still the better player at this stage in their career. Now, again, Aaron Rodgers, he comes with Devontae Adams. You put him in a dome, give him Sean McVay. I don't know. Maybe he can turn back the clock a little bit. Maybe he can look closer to what he looked like down the stretch of last season, which was pretty decent. But I have a hard time believing that he's better than Matthew Stafford at this stage. But we'll see how that goes. I just think I find really I just find the whole thing fascinating. I do find it very interesting that the Rams are able to handle their situation like this. And also, I find it fascinating that the quarterback timeline from the 49ers and the Rams continue to match up. 2021, That's when Matthew Stafford came to the Rams. The 49ers were also interested in Matthew Stafford, but the Rams got him first. Then the 49ers were interested in Deshaun Watson. Then all the stuff came out about Deshaun Watson. Thank goodness they didn't continue to pursue him. Then they poured a bunch of assets into getting Trey Lance, which was a total disaster. And here we are a few short years later, and both teams are at a quarterback crossroads for very different reasons than what they were before. Back then, they were trying to attain and get a quarterback. Now they're trying to figure out, should we extend our current quarterback? And the Rams are saying, yeah, we would love to have you, but we're not willing to pay top dollar necessarily, especially at your age. We're just not willing to do it, no matter how great we think you are. And the 49ers, on the other hand, at least openly in the media, have been all about paying Brock Purdy and trying to get that extension done. Now, I think behind the scenes, we've heard some rumors come out, and maybe that's not quite the case, but you would assume the 49ers are still very much willing to extend Brock Purdy at a pretty high number. And the Rams maybe are a little bit hesitant to do that. And I think right now, Matthew Stafford is the better player than Brock Purdy. The Rams are saying, not so fast. The 49ers are like, yes, please. We're in the Brock Purdy business. So I do find it interesting. I'm not saying one's right, the other one's wrong. I find the contrast interesting. And I find it also very interesting that both of these teams are on a trajectory again where they're looking to figure out what the future is at the quarterback position, just like they were 3 years ago. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Also from the Matthew Stafford side of the house, Matthew Stafford played for an awful Detroit Lions team for so many years. You come to the Rams, you win a Super Bowl, you were this close to an NFC championship, almost beat the champions, the closest team in the playoffs to do so. And now over a few $1,000,000, you're willing to go potentially play for the Giants or the Raiders. That seems a little odd to me. So maybe they're just calling his bluff. I don't know. But those bad teams are obviously going to be willing to pay him, much like bad teams were willing to pay Brandon Ayuk last year. Cleveland Browns were willing to pay him more. The Patriots were willing to pay him more. Those are bad teams. Do you really want to go play for those bad teams? I wouldn't. So I'm curious to see what happens. But Matthew Stafford might be on the move. All Day Everyday Kim says Kyle skipping the combine is one of the reasons why he can't nab a top quarterback. All of the scouting plays, all the scouting plays apart missed opportunities. Well, to be fair, when he went through the process in the 2021 draft or whatever, first of all, none of those quarterbacks were good. That's number one. But number two, they couldn't even attend the scouting combine. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't in place because of COVID. So, and I have a different take on this, but we'll talk about it here in a minute. Let's see. You gonna get some tickets, Alan? That's cool. Oh, I'm sure he did. I'm sure a lot of these players are getting looks right now. Listen, we hear about players having conversations with teams. There's so many more players that get reported that talk to so many teams. So when you hear that, oh, these 60 players got talked to by the 49ers, they talk to a lot more than that. When they're at the Senior Bowl, they talk to pretty much everybody, if not everybody. Dave Barclay says, what if the Lions got Stafford back? Crazy trade. Yeah, that would be nuts. I don't see it happening. I think they're pretty locked into Goff, but yeah, that would be crazy. That would be crazy for sure. All right, let's talk about this Ben Barch deal real quick. So Ben Barch, 1-year contract with the 49ers. And I think there's a real chance here that he's your starting left guard. I find that interesting though, because people are mixed on Ben Barch. He played really, really good. Really, really good. for a game in the snow, and then he was hurt. First of all, I think the signing was an absolute yes. I love it. Inexpensive, 1-year deal. You're trying to build out the line. Worst case scenario, he's a backup. Zero issue with signing Ben Barch. But what if I say this signing means that the 49ers plan at the offensive line position group is as such: Trent Williams, Barcher Burford, Hennessy, or Brendel, or Zakel, either of the three, Pooney and McKivitz. Now, how excited are you? I think most people would be pretty disappointed if that was the plan going into next year and they didn't spend multiple assets in this draft trying to address this offensive line. I think a lot of people would be pretty frustrated with that. Now, there's also a scenario where this is the plan, and they also plan on drafting multiple guys that they want to develop along the way. Maybe they're good enough to start. They can all compete, what have you. But the 49ers, this does seem right up their alley where they're like, hey, we got Barch and Burford. Either one of them is good off the bench. Okay. The other one can start. They can compete. We went and got Hennessy late. He fits the scheme. He can be the starter over Brendel, or maybe Nick Zakel can be the guy. We'll try them all out there. Obviously, we feel good about Pooney and Trent, and McKivitz we feel great about as well. So that's it. Like, we feel good about this. I could see a scenario where the 49ers love this. Now, when it comes to Barch himself, I saw people online saying, oh, this is great. He's an immediate upgrade over what they had in Banks. And maybe that's true, but I think that's a pretty bold statement based off of, what are we talking, 60 snaps, 70 snaps, maybe? We're talking about a very limited sample size. And then he couldn't even make it through multiple games. And also that sample size came in the snow. And a lot of people said that that offenses have an advantage in the snow because they know exactly what's going on and the defense is trying to catch up and they can't get their footing. And we saw multiple times during that game where the defensive linemen were slipping and falling face first on both teams. So I tend to lean towards the offensive line probably had the advantage there. So that's it. That's what we know. We know he was good in the snow for a game. That's it. Now, I don't think that the 49ers are just going to give him the job, whether they draft somebody or not. I'm sure they'll have him compete with Burford or what have you. But to say that he's an immediate upgrade over Banks, I think that's, and he may be. He may be. I'm not saying he's not. I just don't know how you can draw that conclusion off of one game in the snow. So I guess what I'm saying is I hope that the 49ers plan isn't what I laid out, which is Trent or a rookie, because I'll believe that Trent Williams is for sure not retiring once the draft is over and we're in the clear and he's still on this roster. I don't know why I have a bad feeling about it. Probably is nothing. I'm sure he'll be here, but I don't know. I'm not willing to solidify that he's for sure here, but either way, Trent or rookie, Barch or Burford, Hennessy, Brendel, Zakel, Pooney, McKivitz. If that's the plan, I would be disappointed. And I think you would too. Even if we think that Ben Barch is an upgrade over Aaron Banks, which I don't know, is he? I think, like I said, it's pretty steep. It's pretty steep. Kendricks, are you talking about the linebacker Kendricks from last year? You know, I will say this. I didn't talk about what Campbell had said in his crazy rant on Twitter, or seemingly crazy rant. And I'm not going to get into it a ton here, but there is one interesting thing that he said that I do find kind of believable, saying that he was okay with retiring and Shanahan and Lynch basically begged him to play. Now, I don't know that you're talking about Kendricks, the linebacker here. I assume you are, but he was effectively committed to the 49ers, didn't officially sign, last minute, changed his mind, went to the Dallas Cowboys. And then the 49ers were in a pretty desperate situation, it seemed like. And that's how they landed on Campbell. I could see a scenario where they called up Campbell and were pretty adamant about having him, maybe even desperate, came across as desperate anyways. Had we known that information, I think we would have all agreed that last season was not going to go well. Just off the fact that Devondre Campbell was like, we have to have this player. We are going to essentially beg him to play on this team. Now, I don't know that that's true or not, but based on how everything happened, I could see that being a legitimate statement. And if it was, and we were privy to that prior, I think we would have all agreed last season was not going to go well. I think we would have all believed that. I wish we would have been privy to that information if it's true before it happened. Because, man, nobody thought Campbell was going to be good. And if that's who you were hanging your hat on, geez, man, you were in a bad situation. I'm with this. I am definitely with this for sure. Yes, agree. But again, both things could be true, right? Like they could draft some guys and develop them as well. So let's see what else he's saying. I wouldn't know. I'm not a I've never sat through Star Wars. I wouldn't know. Mm, I don't know. I think that's a different scenario. I don't. I see what you're saying, Sivo, but there's also a scenario here where one is true and not the other. They could both not be true. They could both be true. But just because the Rogers situation, like if we're assuming that that's not real, which I don't believe it was, if we're assuming that's not real, it doesn't then mean that the Campbell situation is not a legitimate situation. Oh, they can. Oh, they can. That's what I'm saying. And again, I don't. I'm not saying that that's the case, but if it was, and we knew that, oh man, we would have all been out. We would have all been out. I do love casual clothing. It's comfortable. And when you're over 40, being comfortable is way more important than looking good. For sure. All right, let's talk about this scouting combine thing. I heard a lot of opinions about it. I didn't really put my thoughts out there. I think most not most people. I think everybody's kind of all over the place with this. Let's not forget that Kyle Shanahan has not been going to this for a long time. What was it? He went like the first year or something like that, first 2 years. A lot of coaches do go to this. A lot of coaches go to this. Bill Belichick used to be there every year. We know that Andy Reid is usually there. And those are great coaches. And so it's easy to say, well, these coaches are great. They show up. Why is Shanahan not there? I also don't see the importance of it the same that I think a lot of people do. So for those that are saying, "Hey, he needs to go there because he needs to scout these prospects." That's not how I see it. I think the argument of he should go is so that he can meet these prospects in person. Now, what he will do, I imagine, is be on Zoom calls whenever these prospects are meeting with the 49ers brass, John Lynch, what have you. I'm sure Kyle Shanahan will be on a Zoom call, but being on a Zoom call and being there in person, shaking hands, reading body language, all that stuff is very, very different. So for me, I think the argument to go is to get to know these prospects as people as much as you can before you draft them. And I also think that it's very realistic that a prospect can walk into the room and John Lynch feels one way about them and Kyle Shanahan could feel a different way about them. And then they can have conversation and talk that through. What worries me is if Shanahan is not meeting these players in person and getting first impressions, and then they draft a player, he's the one that has to coach this player on a daily basis. And if he's coaching them and they don't vibe, they don't see eye to eye, Kyle sees things in him that he doesn't like, he can only blame himself for not going to the combine potentially. Now, there may be other opportunities to meet these players. I don't know, but that's just the way that I see it. Now, I also don't think it's that big of a deal that he's not going. I don't look at this as like, oh my gosh, now they're going to suck in the draft and Kyle Shanahan is really screwing up here and he needs to be there. I don't necessarily believe that. I just think the importance of it has way more to do with meeting the individuals and having conversations, shaking their hand, looking them in the eye a lot more than it does having them run 3-cone drills. Yeah, I don't think watching someone do a 3-cone is the reason that you should go as a head coach anyways. I don't look at this as like some players will move up boards based off of how this weekend goes because maybe they're expected to test really slow and then they don't test slow. And so they can move up boards a little bit or vice versa. Maybe a player is expected to test really well and then they test really slow and that can change things. But I think for the most part, your board is your board. There's going to be some slight tweaks. Like maybe you have two players that are close. You then see them side by side. One tests better, then you meet them in person. And it's like, oh, well, this is a no brainer. I did have them close, but now I have this prospect clearly above this other prospect. Like those things I believe do happen. But for the most part, you're not just, oh my gosh, I don't know anything about these players. And everything that happens here is going to override everything that we've seen on film. I don't see it that way. I don't see it that way at all. I also think that pro days are every bit as important, if not more important, than the combine itself, just from a drill aspect. So I don't look at it as he's missing out on the drills. That I could care less. I really could. Just think meeting people in person is very, very different. Very different. I mean, think about it. How many times have you had a crazy interaction online with somebody? You're like, I know that if I met this person in real life, there's 0% chance that that would ever happen. There's no way that I would say this and they would react in that manner in person. It just wouldn't happen. Even like a Zoom call, you can act a little bit different. You can be a little bit different. Like I think you guys have a pretty good feel of who I am or who I'm not based off of watching me behind a screen for thousands of videos. But you don't know everything about me. You don't know how I interact in every little detail of how life works. You may have a thought, you may have a feeling. You may think if this happens in life, Jesse will probably react this way based off of what I know and watching him, but you don't know that for sure, even after 1,000 videos. But I bet if you spent a day with me, you would see me in every interaction with my family and friends and stuff like that. One actual day spent with me in life, I bet you would know more about me than watching me 1,000 times on YouTube. So, what I'm saying is one interaction in person, seeing body language, all of that is way more important than anything that you're gonna get behind a screen. And asking legitimate questions in person and watching how they react, it's way easier if I'm being asked a tough question through a screen, that's way easier for me to answer that question than if somebody's right in front of me. They're like, "Hey, this incident in May of 2023 happened in college. What's up with that?" That's a heck of a lot easier question to answer when somebody's on a screen than right in front of you. So, that's what I think he's missing out on. Do I think it's a death sentence or the 49ers are screwed because of it? No, I don't. I don't find it as big of a deal as some do. And this is how they've operated for a long time. I also don't think Kyle Shanahan showing up to this would have meant that their draft picks over the last few years would have been better. I don't know that that's the case. I don't know that's the case. I would say that in 2021, if the 49ers had an opportunity to have more in-person interaction with their quarterbacks, that they were going through that process, that maybe there was something that Kyle would have seen in Trey and made him select somebody else. Like maybe the idea of Trey Lance would have been made pretty clear in person and through conversation and just spending a lot more time together. And he could have figured out some things pretty early on versus like, oh man, I really like the idea of this athletic quarterback that's 6'4" and has a big arm and can move and do all these things and played in an offense in college that was my style of offense. Maybe he could have ironed some of that stuff out and he would have went with somebody different. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there's been a couple prospects in the past that were close that he would have leaned a slightly different direction than what he did if he had been at the combine. I don't know. Maybe that prospect would have been worse. Maybe maybe Drake Jackson wasn't a good pick, but the other player they were looking at was even worse. I don't know. But I do think that meeting somebody in person is pretty important. And having that conversation is way better in person than it is over Zoom. But overall, like I said, I don't believe that it's a death sentence by any means. And I think that there are a lot of people I think there's a lot of people that just can't stand Kyle and they look at it and say, "Ah, here we go. Kyle Shanahan does it again, not showing up to the combine like Andy Reid would never." Because they already hate Kyle. So it's just another reason to hate Kyle. So I think that's probably more of what's happening. Dazza says, wouldn't be disappointed if that's their O line plan. I'd expect nothing less than a half ass attempt with the O line. Yeah. Mm. It sounds to me like you're saying that you wouldn't be disappointed, not because you agree with the plan, but because you expect the 49ers to half ass it more so than anything. And anything else would make you pleasantly surprised. But in the ideal world, you wouldn't want that to be their plan. That's what it seems like to me that you're saying. I could be wrong. Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if that's their plan. I would be a little disappointed. I would. But at the same time, the 49ers have said in the past, very recent past, that they don't care so much about the O line. They don't put the effort into the O line the way that we would like them to. And that's the other thing. There are prospects that you may like and prefer that they're looking at and saying, They don't fit our style. They don't fit our offense. They don't fit being mobile the way we need them to. We like our offensive linemen a little lighter, a little more agile. And you may look at it and be like, man, I want this player because he's a mauler. And they're like, nope, we don't care. We want this guy. So even if they take an offensive lineman, it doesn't mean it's going to be a guy that you necessarily agree with. Dave says, if the Niners pay Brock more than, say, 40 per year, is it a mistake? I don't know. It all comes down to how it's structured. It really does. I mean, the ultimate number doesn't mean that much. The AAV doesn't mean that much. I mean, you could pay him 40 a year and it could be structured so horribly that it's worse than the 60 million AAV just because of how it's structured. More's guaranteed, more's up front, more, I mean, there's a bunch of ways that they can go, and the AAV isn't near as important for sure. We talk AAV because it's the easiest thing to do. Again, I think what's going to happen is the news is going to drop. There's going to be a ton of reactions. And then in the next 24 hours, the details will come out. And those reactions will either look silly and people will walk them back, or they'll be spot on, I guess, because it's structured bad and maybe they reacted bad. But I encourage you that when that news drops and you see that giant number scroll across the screen, we're certainly going to talk about it. There's going to be a breaking news. Brock Purdy signs extension, and we're going to be live and we're going to talk about it. But one thing I will not do is overreact based off of the initial contract being leaked. I'm not going to overreact to it because there's so many things that they can do and how they structure it that are going to be far more important. So my real reaction is going to be a day or so later when the contract drops. That is going to determine, the details will determine how I react to it. Either way, I don't think hitching your wagon to Brock is smart long term. But there are ways where I'll feel a lot better about it depending on how that contract is structured, for sure. And ultimately, I've just come to the conclusion that that's what they're going to do. They're going to sign an extension with him, or he's going to sign an extension with them. And so I'm expecting it, and I'm as fine with it as what I'm going to be. I mean, there's no point in being frustrated with it because it's what's going to happen. So my whole conversation point is now more about how can the 49ers be competitive with Brock Purdy as their quarterback, and how can they build the best team around him. But a lot of that is going to be determined on how that contract is broken down. So off rip, if it's 40 million, it sounds great. If it's more than that, it could sound like a mistake, but how it's structured is far, far, far more important than the AAV. It just is. Expect pain. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I don't know that Steve Young would be a good coach. Ooh, grow a pair. Who should grow a pair? What are we talking about? What are we talking about? Uh, I hope so. I sure hope so. Um, Otherwise, everybody in the chat's SOL, right? I'd feel fantastic about Nolan at 11. I still like Nolan a lot. Um, I would be totally fine with Nolan at 11. I would. I mean, probably a few guys I would be okay with. I also would be okay with trading back. Here's an interesting scenario that's come up. Is a lot of people are saying that the 49ers might want to go tackle to replace Trent Williams. And maybe that tackle can start at right tackle right away. I don't know. But they're saying in order to do that, to get the tackle that they would most likely want, they'd have to leapfrog the Bears, which means they would have to move up 2 spots. So that would essentially cost them, like, you move up 2 spots, you're talking about around 100 value points. I don't know, you're sending pick 111 or something, or 138 maybe, with pick 11 to get pick number 9. Like, you're not spending a lot, but how would you feel about that if they really want a certain left tackle and they move up a couple spots? I think I'd be okay with that too. I don't know that that player exists where they should give up like a first and a second, move into the top 5 to get a player. I don't know how I'd feel about that. I think that would be a little weird, or move up to 7 to get a player. I think that would be steep. But if they moved up a couple spots, I wouldn't be mad about it. They stayed where they're at and took Nolan, I wouldn't be mad at that. If they move back, and I don't know, there's multiple guys that if they move back, I'd feel totally comfortable taking those guys as well. So I don't know. I think there's some good options. I do think there's some good options. They can go a multitude of different ways. Well, Krug said Brock might get a Goff contract. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I don't know that that's like some amazing thought, because a lot of quarterbacks have just recently signed. I mean, if he got you have a lot of contracts to look at. You can look at Goff's, you can look at Hurts, you can look at Herbert's, you can look at Love's, you can look at Tua's, you can look at Trevor Lawrence's. Like, those are the ones that were signed recently enough to where you have an idea of where you're going to be. As far as structure goes, all of those were structured very, very differently. Very differently. Some good, some bad. Like, I hate the way that Miami structured Tua's. I thought that was awful. I love the way that Hertz was structured. So there's a lot of different ways that they can go. But sure, yes, Goff, they might look to get a Goff type of deal, but they might look to get a Hertz type of deal, or a Love type of deal, or a Tua type of deal. So those are the players that you're essentially looking at. So yes, he might get a Goff type of deal for sure. Anything crazy? I don't know. What would constitute crazy? I think honestly, the only thing that would constitute like crazy is, I'll give you an example. Dart or Sanders falls to 11. The 49ers take him. I think that would constitute crazy. Now, I'm not saying that that would necessarily be the worst move in the world. I haven't watched those prospects. I don't know what to think of them yet. But that would be crazy. I think that constitutes crazy. So if that's crazy, then no, I don't see them doing something like that. I think that would be wild. That would be unexpected. That would be crazy. So no, I don't think so. Yes, completely agree. They structured that awful. Uh, Thoughts on Grant's proposal of trading Purdy for Stafford? Um, I don't think an in division trade makes sense, especially at the quarterback level. I also don't think that McVay would love Brock Purdy as his guy. McVay are I don't know. I think McVay has kind of shown that he prefers s better players. I don't know how else to put it without coming across rude. Like, he had Jared Goff. Jared Goff is a different player than Brock Purdy, but Jared Goff is a fine player. He's borderline a top 10 quarterback when he's at his best, or is slightly in the top 10 when he's at his best. I think we can say the same thing about Brock Purdy. Like, Brock Purdy at his best might be like the 8th best quarterback in the league. Now, that doesn't mean that he's consistent enough to always stay there, but I could say the same thing about Goff. When Goff's been at his best, he's might be the 8th best quarterback in the league. But those guys towards the back end of 10, they fluctuate week to week, month to month, season to season. And Goff has been extremely consistent for many years. Like, we know that Goff is solidified as, at worst, let's say the 14th best quarterback in the league. We know that it is absolute worst, that's who he is. At his absolute best, he's the 8th guy. And we know that because of years of data. And McVay said that wasn't good enough for him. So why would he just clamor over paying Brock Purdy a bunch of money and give him a long-term deal? I don't see that he would be excited about that. I don't. Why would he be? If he wasn't excited about Jared Goff, why would he be just elated to have Brock Purdy? Even if you think Brock Purdy's better, we're talking a slight, minute difference. The difference between Stafford and Goff when they got Stafford was staggering. Staggering. There was a pretty big gap between those two players from a talent perspective and what you were getting. Both players were established. It was clear that Matthew Stafford was a much better quarterback than Jared Goff 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was. Is it clear that Purdy's even better than Goff? And if he is, what are we talking? One's 9 and one's 10? One's 9 and one's 11? Like, we're talking a sliver of a difference. So, no, I don't think he'd be excited about that. Lawrence was actually structured pretty well. I actually like the way that his was structured. I wouldn't be mad at that. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. If you believe like the way that the past is gone, then yeah, that's possible. If you watch Sanders' film, it's really pass happy offense and he doesn't have the greatest arm. Yeah, I think people assume that Sanders is one way because of who his dad is. I will say this, I haven't broken down Sanders, but my initial thought of Sanders in the little bit that I've watched of him is he has an average arm. I think he's got really good ball placement at times. He doesn't throw the best deep ball, and he's not super elusive in the pocket. Like, he can move, he can get mobile, and I think he's got some good straight line speed. Yeah, some good straight line speed, but he's not elusive in the pocket. Like, I think Brock Purdy's more elusive than Shedeur Sanders. But I also think, based off of how Shedeur plays, based off of what I've seen, he would fit this offense better than what most people would think he would. Now, Shedeur Sanders on a rookie deal versus Brock on a massive contract extension, I don't know. I haven't watched Shedeur Sanders to say that I would feel comfortable going that route. I think initially I love the thought of that, but I don't know how good of a prospect Shedeur really is. I'm not sure of that. I haven't watched him enough. but he definitely doesn't play the way most people, I think, would describe him or think about him based off of his last name. Yeah, I mean, I think, if you've watched a couple games, then you know that he certainly isn't the player that a lot of people would say he is. Yes, Jesse, my comment was sarcastic regarding the offensive line. I'm so used to the 49ers not paying significant attention to it. Baffling if they are going to overpay Purdy. Yeah, I figured. I figured that's where you were going with it. Nice. See what you did there. The difference is one's worth it and the other one is not. Who are we talking about, Papa? Who who are you discussing there? If the Niners had Jim Harbaugh as head coach and Shanahan as OC and Fangio as DC, the Niners would have been like the Chiefs, multiple Super Bowls. Oh, dude, if for real, if that was the coaching staff, 100% they would have had a ring. Are you kidding me? That's like the best coaching staff since, I don't know, Walsh's coaching staffs. Like that would be incredible. Frank Tom Ocean, member for 23 months. Appreciate you. Says almost 2 years, Jess. Keep up the good work, bro. I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. 2 years, man. That's wild. Yeah, I talked about it a little bit at the beginning. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. If he's truly the player that we saw in the 60 or so snaps, then I'm totally fine with it. But we saw a game in the snow and then he got injured. So can he stay healthy? That's one. Is he really that good or was it the snow? I mean, there's so many questions. So many questions I have. People in this skinned knee squad are getting very upset at you, Jesse. You're not talking badly enough about Brock. I should know. I don't know them personally. I don't know. What is the skin knee squad? I'm curious. I don't know. I think based off of what I said, uh, most most people that think I'm the biggest Brock hater would hate what I've already said today. So I appreciate that you don't think that I'm talking bad about him. I think a lot of people would say the opposite. But who's the skin knee squad? If you start out trade Purdy knowing he'd get paid, you might be a wishful thinker. You might be a redneck. You might be a wishful thinker. It's not going to happen. Um, this is also true. This is also true. My bad, Jesse. You were comparing Purdy with Goff, and I thought you were comparing Purdy with Stafford. I don't know. I was kind of. I was more saying that Stafford 4 years ago compared to Goff was significant difference. Today, Goff and Purdy is not a significant difference. So, if we're making the case of why McVay would make a trade right now for Purdy, I don't I don't know that he would. Yeah, you don't yeah, exactly. The old what is it, Jeff Foxworthy, is that what it was? Might be a redneck if you're watching if you're watching this show on a TV that's on top of a broken TV. I remember that was one of his jokes. Those guys weren't very funny though. Just like Larry the Cable Guy and all. I don't know. I never thought they were that funny. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're not getting 2 firsts for Brock. You're probably not getting a first for Brock. Maybe a tail end of the first, maybe. Um, I don't know that you. I know you're not getting 2 firsts. There's no way. Yeah, trash. No, this year he did not. True. This is also true. This is so funny that you bring this up. Okay. I was literally having a conversation. In fact, the conversation's probably still going. Um, it is still going. I knew that it was. So I'm in a text thread with David, who I do the post game with, and Marco, who most of you know. And again, these guys they geek out over the draft. Like this is a year round process for them. For the last 3 hours, the conversation has been about him and his arm length. And does it show up on film? And should he be a guard or should he be a tackle? And if he's a tackle, can he play left tackle or is he a right tackle? Like that's the whole conversation. Here's what I will say. I haven't personally watched him, so I don't have a ton of thoughts of how good he is or is not. Based off of what I know about him that everybody has access to, which is he's played right tackle and a lot of people view him as a guard. At 11, I would be bummed out if that is who they took. Because it seems like even if he's a tackle in the NFL, he's most likely a right tackle in the NFL. So going with him at 11 would be, I think, a reach. Now, if they traded back and got him in the 20s or traded back up early in round 2 and got him, I think the value would be much more in line. But at 11, I don't think I would feel great about that based off of what I know. But again, I haven't watched them, so I'm not going to say for sure. Exactly. Dude. Oh my gosh. So it's a $60 million cap hit right away. I'll take my chances on Mordecai. I know nothing about him, and I don't know if he's good or what, but if that's the options, give me Mordecai. They did take McFloppy at 9. You're right about that. They did. Great one says 11th and 21st pick sound real good. Trade Purdy to Pittsburgh. Uh, if you could get the 21st pick, sure. Spidey G says same Mordecai on this team would be fun. It'd be an adventure. I'll say that. I mean, I don't know that he's any good. I don't know that he's any good. So it would definitely be fun. It would be an adventure for sure. Is he good? I don't know. But I do know that paying 60 million against the cap for 5 years in a row to have Brock Purdy would not be a smart move for sure. It just wouldn't be. I'm assuming that you're saying I am for saying that I'd rather go Mordecai than Purdy. If that's the choice, then sure, I'll be an idiot. Matthew says 49ers had a worse O-line and worse weapons with Jimmy G than Purdy, and Jimmy G had the same success and didn't win a Super Bowl. By the way, Jimmy G was mid. At best here, just saying Purdy's overrated. Um, I don't know. I think it's based off the conversation. I think there's a big chunk of people that can make the argument he's overrated. I also think there's a big chunk of people that would make the argument that he's underrated. No. No, we don't. You could bring in Mac Jones or Zach Wilson or Russell Wilson as well as a backup in case Mordecai sucked. Yeah, listen, if it was like, hey, you're signing Brock Purdy and he's a guaranteed lock cap hit of 60 million for each of the next 5 years, or you are looking at Mordecai and then probably looking to draft somebody and bring in a veteran, like I'll go that route. I'll go that route. Mordecai's fast. Yep. Sure. He has a decent arm. We know that. Yeah, maybe. I didn't know who you were talking about. Hendrickson and Winston. Hendrickson's not a free agent, though. I think you have to trade for him. I don't know that he's a free agent. Yeah, I don't know much about Mordecai. I mean, I think in a game situation, it's a crapshoot. It's definitely a crapshoot. So, one thing too that I want to talk about while I'm thinking about it is the 49ers potentially selling 10% of the organization. Now, when this was first brought up, people asked me my thoughts. And initially I said, hey, this isn't going to change much. And I do agree with that. It's not like selling 10% is going to change who makes the decisions or Jed York being the majority owner, but it could change things in the sense that the way that you can kind of manipulate the salary cap is by giving money up front to players. And if you have more cash on hand, i.e., selling 10% of the organization and getting, I don't know, 800 million in cash, and you're willing to take that and dump it back into player contracts to get better written contracts, then it could make a difference. Also, though, it does sound like the 49ers are going to be buying even more into a soccer team or into another soccer. I don't know. I don't know anything about soccer, but I read that they're looking to be majority owners of a soccer team. Now, the one that they originally purchased, I don't know if they're already majority owners. So this would be another soccer team in a different league, or if it's just simply that team that they aren't majority owners and they're looking to be. I don't know. Either way, if that's what he's looking to do, then maybe this money would be for that. That's a possibility. But selling 10% and taking that and dumping it into player contracts and paying them upfront money really can help you manipulate the salary cap a little bit, a lot more than it could by not paying them big bonuses. It allows you to kick money down the road, have void years, that type of stuff. So if they were to do that, then that is a possibility in a way that it can help the 49ers. But as far as like the day-to-day operations, who's making decisions, this 10% owner can't come in and be like, not really a fan of your offensive coordinator. You should get rid of him. Nobody cares. Nobody's listening to them. So nothing would change on that end. But just having liquid cash certainly can change things for sure. Why do teams, let's say Debo test his market? You think those owners haven't talked? Um, yeah. I mean, they've talked. That's the thing though, is when a player becomes available, everybody knows pretty quickly what that player is worth and essentially what it's going to take to get said player. And now it just comes down to, are you willing to give up those assets to get those players or that player? So people know what Debo's value is for the most part. I just think that most teams are like if Debo's cut, which it does sound like that's likely to happen. We're hearing reports. Multiple teams are interested in Debo Samuel. Yes, I agree with that. Multiple teams are probably interested in Debo Samuel. That doesn't mean that multiple teams are interested in trading for Debo Samuel at the price the 49ers are asking. Because those same teams know that if Debo is cut, they can get him without giving up assets, and they can work a contract that fits their salary cap a lot better than the one that's existing in place. So most teams know. Most teams know. Yeah. I don't think he can. Yeah. He owns the Commanders. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, he can't. He can't. You can't own multiple teams. Somebody will, though. Somebody most definitely will. Because it's a cash cow. I mean, buying 10% of the 49ers, even at the evaluation it is now, which is insane, that number's only going to go up. It just is. Cryptic says, Jesse, realistically, do you see BA playing this season? I worry because Greenlaw was in and out of the lineup when he tried to play. I do. I do see him playing at some point. I don't see him playing week 1. I don't see him playing week 1. But I do see him playing at some point for sure. Is that interested like my wife asking me for dessert when she was too embarrassed to order her own, or her offering me her leftovers when she doesn't want more? I, I'm not quite sure. Number only going up if they control the gambling, or everyone ruined it for us all. That number is going up because in 2029 they have a new TV deal, and somebody's going to pay out the wazoo to have the NFL on their platform. So if you notice, see, this is really interesting. Go look at contracts the Philadelphia Eagles have executed over the last couple of years. Go look at those contracts and go look at when a big chunk of their money is owed on those contracts. You're going to most likely see around 2029, which is when that new contract for the NFL is going to be in place. Because the Eagles know that big time money is going to come when that new contract is executed. So, regardless, I think no matter what happens with the gambling stuff, there's a big contract looming from networks that are going to want to carry NFL games. So, what's up, Madge? How are you? It's crazy trying to piece together my NFL watching schedule with all the different TV and stuff. I see. That's the thing, though. They have to get it under control to a certain extent because it is kind of ridiculous. You shouldn't have to go to 7 different places to watch football, and I think that can deter fans if you make it too difficult. Like, I think the fact that there are people that already buy Sunday ticket, and then they don't get access to the Christmas games or a playoff game because it's on Paramount or on Netflix or Peacock, or you're doing too much. Like, you were already in a lawsuit for charging essentially too much for NFL Sunday ticket. Doing that now while also not giving every game is kind of wild. Oh, nice. That's awesome. That's awesome. Magic's not magical. Jesse, I don't drink soda anymore, but Coke or Pepsi. I don't even know what that means. And it's called pop, just so we're clear. I don't know. I call it pop. Steve-O says, I watch it on an antenna or the bar or I pirate it. Yeah, I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people do. Yeah, I don't know. I'll watch a little bit of it. Do you think Gore is a first ballot Hall of Famer, third in rushing, but as much as he is an all-time 49er, he only led the league in rushing one time and was never considered the best running back of his era? Did he actually lead the league in rushing ever? Are we sure? Hold on, let's look it up. I know he had like 1,800 yards, but did that lead the league that year? I don't think you're gonna like my take on Frank Gore in the Hall of Fame. Or no, he had 1,600 yards. It wasn't even 1,800. Here, um, here. I don't know that he led the league. Uh, Here we go. He never led the league in rushing. That's what I thought. Yeah, he never led the league in rushing. Um, I don't think he's going to get in first ballot. I imagine he probably will get in. Frank Gore is one of my favorite players of all time. I also don't think he's a Hall of Famer. Like to me, it's not the Hall of Very Good. It's the Hall of Fame. And if you weren't, if I can never say to your point that you were the best in the league at your position or consistently top 3 year in and year out, I, no. But I'm also very tough. I also don't think Matthew Stafford is a Hall of Famer. Matthew Stafford has a Super Bowl ring and he has tons of accolades statistically, but I've never considered as Matthew Stafford has been consistently like top 7 for a long time, but I've never considered him top 3 in the league ever. That's kind of where I am with Frank Gore. So, no, I would say I personally don't think he should get in the Hall of Fame, but assuming he does eventually make it, I'll be happy for him. I love Frank Gore. The inconvenient truth. It was 16 something. Yeah, it was this, I think his second year, third year. Oh, for sure he did. For sure he did. But Barry Sanders put up 2,000 yards behind a pretty crappy offensive line, too. Let's see. For sure. Yeah, at least like with Roger Craig, he did something that had never been done before. You know what I mean? And that was pretty remarkable. But I agree. I agree. Oh man, you're terrible. He's the best, man. He was absolutely incredible. I have a lot of really good signatures. Uh, Barry Sanders is one that I want. I have to have a Barry Sanders added to my collection at some point. I've got a lot of really good ones, but Barry Sanders is one that I definitely want to get at some point. I think him and Jim Brown are the two best running backs of all time. I've got Jim Brown. I don't have Barry, so I would love to get Barry Sanders. I've got a lot of cool signatures, a lot of cool ones. I'm just looking at them across the room. Barry Sanders has to be in the collection, though, for sure. I agree. Eli shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. I agree. Yep. Yep. Shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. I say Billy Sims. I don't know. I appreciate like old school athletes too. Like I have an appreciation for like guys that I never even got to see play, like Wilt Chamberlain and Jim Brown and those types of players. Just because I know that they like really paved the way. Yeah, I said no. I don't think he is. I wouldn't, based off my criteria, right? So I'm not going to be inconsistent here. If I don't think Frank Gore is a Hall of Famer, then there's a lot of good players that aren't getting in the Hall of Fame based off of how I would judge the Hall of Fame. So, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Top 5 running backs in history of the game to me at number 1, my idol from Houston. Oh, Earl Campbell. Oh, dude. Earl Campbell was such a beast, man. I don't know that I would put him in my top 5. Um, but I understand why he's your favorite, dude. I mean, Earl Campbell. Oh, the size of that dude's legs were out of this world. Like I remember when Jamal Anderson was in the league for the Falcons. Remember how big his legs were? He had to get like jeans tailor made to fit around his legs. And Earl Campbell was the same way, except for he just punished people with his running style too. It was a whole different game back then, but Earl Campbell was a G. Absolute G. My gosh. Is Walter Payton really your cousin? That's crazy. Rest in peace, man. Rest in peace. I would say my top 5 in order. Mm, This is tough. Uh Man. I'd probably go Brown, Sanders, either Dickerson or Payton, one or the other. Um Man, I don't know. Five's tough. I don't know who I would have at 5. I'd have to really look into it. Those would be my top 4. Those would be my top 4 though. Yeah, I wouldn't put them in either. I wouldn't put them in either. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, and this is why I appreciate like players like Jim Brown and why I have his signature because he was the only Hall of Famer. This is what Jerry Rice said. When they go and they do their Hall of Fame dinner every year and they meet up and everybody that's in the Hall of Fame is there and they're at dinner. He's the only one that would walk into a room and every other Hall of Famer would stand up to basically welcome him into the room. He was royalty. So you've got the elite of the elite to ever do it. and he was the one guy that everybody else was like, that dude, he was the dude. We were all the dude, but that's the actual dude was Jim Brown. So that's why I respect it. Yeah, Dickerson was nasty. Gale Sayers was a stud. There's so many. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, he was the original, right? Like he was did the Barry Sanders thing before Barry Sanders. So, as far as what? Hall of Fame? No. No, it's way too early for that. I hate children except for my own. No, I'm totally joking. No, dude, listen, I'm just consistent, man. I'm consistent. Consistent. I definitely don't hate these players. I just don't think that they're Hall of Famers. Oh, I would love this. I think this is like one of the slept on things that's not being talked about because the 49ers didn't make the playoffs. They could actually end up on Hard Knocks. Oh my gosh. I would love nothing more than to see the 49ers on Hard Knocks. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? 49ers on Hard Knocks? Please. Please sign me up. Yes. Yeah, different reasons for sure. Different reasons. What changes history more if the 49ers won a Super Bowl in 2012, 19, or 23? Rank how history changes the most and the least. This one's tough. Um, I mean, I would say from a history standpoint, oh gosh, I don't know. Because if they win in 12, Harbaugh doesn't leave. So I think 49ers history changes more with 2012, but I think NFL history changes more with 2019. And 2023 is just last. The reason I say 2019 changes NFL history more is because that would have meant that Mahomes would have lost his first two Super Bowls. How would Mahomes be viewed if they had lost that Super Bowl? And would he have ever won a Super Bowl? Maybe he wouldn't have had one, right? Like that 2019 like propelled him into a Super Bowl. How would it have changed? I don't know. So I think NFL history changes the most with 2019, but 49er history by a wide margin changes the most with 2012 by a wide margin. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. 2012 for the 49ers history for sure. No, I wouldn't put Philip Rivers in. I wouldn't put Philip Rivers in. First ballot? No. No. Hall of Famer, yes. First ballot, no. If he were to retire tomorrow, I don't think he should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Absolutely not. Um, Patrick Willis wasn't first ballot, right? And I think Patrick Willis is a better player than Fred Warner. So if he retired tomorrow, now I think when Fred Warner retires, assuming we get another like 3 years out of him, then I will absolutely be like, yes, first ballot Hall of Famer for sure. But at this moment, no. Kittle is absolutely a Hall of Famer. And I believe he's a first ballot Hall of Famer as well. There's a difference, right? There is a difference. And I think he's first ballot. Yeah, no, I understand that. I do, but there's a big difference in when Dan Marino played versus when Philip Rivers played. Like I'll give you an example. Let's go look at it right now. Okay. Dan Marino put up 5,084 yards in 1984. Okay. So let's go look at the 1984 season. All right, you ready for this? So Dan Marino was 470 yards ahead of number 2 that year. There was only 2 other quarterbacks besides Dan Marino to eclipse even 4,000 passing yards. Here was the top 5. 4,614, 4,044, 3,740, 3,671, and Dan Marino had 5,084. Now let's do touchdowns. Dan Marino had 48 touchdowns, followed by 32, 28, 28, and 25. All right. Now let's go look at Phillip Rivers. We'll take his best passing season. Phillip Rivers' best passing season. First of all, he never got to 5,000 yards. But his best season, he led the league in 2010. Okay. So let's go look at 2010. Number 2 was Peyton Manning, just 10 yards behind him. Number 3 was Drew Brees at 4,620, so less than 100 yards away. Then we had 4,370 and 4,002. So you had 5 players go over 4,000 versus 3, and the gap between him and 2 was only 10 yards. In fact, the gap between him and number 4 was less than the gap between Marino and number 2 that year. And touchdown-wise, Phillip Rivers that same year ranked 5th. Touchdown leader that year was Tom Brady with 36. So even in 2010, people weren't putting up Dan Marino 1984 numbers. And we can all agree football was a lot harder in 1984 to pass than it was in 2010. And it's even way easier now than it was in 2010. So, yeah. Yardage then and yardage in 2010 was very different. So I don't care what raw stats say. Jesse, would you exchange the 19 and 21 playoff wins over the Packers for the 95 and 97 playoff losses for the Packers? Oh, man. Nah, I'll keep things the way that they were. So what are we saying? What are we saying? For sure. Garrison Hurst in the chat. Love watching him play. Too bad he didn't get. Yeah, dude, Garrison Hurst, man. I love Garrison Hurst. If he hadn't got hurt against the Falcons, I genuinely think the 49ers would have won the Super Bowl that year. I do. For sure. For sure. From a history standpoint, what would make us the greatest team ever? Because we would have not lost any Super Bowls and won 8 or 9. Oh, you're saying like if we had won those Super Bowls? Oh yeah, by far. I mean, I think that was like the big thing is we had multiple teams with 5 Super Bowl wins, but the 49ers had never lost. That's what was huge. But we're still on the Mount Rushmore. Like if I'm looking at NFL franchises and we're doing a Mount Rushmore, so the top 4 franchises, no particular order, I'm just putting them up there. Packers, Steelers, Niners, Cowboys. That's the Mount Rushmore. That's the Mount Rushmore. And just off the list is Patriots. But even then, it's like, would you put the Patriots, as far as just a franchise goes, above the Bears? I don't know. A lot of history there. The Chiefs, they're starting to climb that mountain a little bit. But as far as like football royalty goes with franchises, those are my four. Dude, that 06, was that the team that lost in round one? What was the Charger team that lost in round one? They were number one in offense, number one in defense, and dead last in special teams. Oh, they didn't even make the playoffs, I think. They finished like 9-7 or whatever it was. Yeah, that was crazy. No, they're not on the Mount Rushmore. They're there. I mean, they're in the conversation with, I think, the Patriots and stuff as far as like the next team up. But those are the four on the Mount Rushmore. Oh, 1,000%. Yeah, 1,000. Yes, 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 yes. Charlie Gardner was Shady McCoy before Shady McCoy. Like, they're exactly the same player as far as stylistically, exactly the same player. Identical. And for those of you that are too young to know Charlie Gardner, but knew who LaShawn McCoy was, go watch a highlight of Charlie Gardner right now and tell me that that wasn't Shady McCoy. Big time, yes. Mount Rushmore? No, 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 no. Because the Mount Rushmore in all sports would be Yankees, Lakers. Those two for sure are on there. Probably have to put the Celtics on there. And then you're going to take a football team and probably going to have to go with the Packers. I mean, as much as I hate to say it, I mean, if you took the Celtics off and you put a hockey team on, but yeah, no, I don't think that the 49ers are on the Mount Rushmore of franchises sports wise. No, but they are in football for sure. For sure they are. Yeah, I wouldn't know in hockey. So I could easily be doing somebody a major disservice. I would put the Packers above the Cowboys personally. I would. Um, yeah, the Cubs. Yeah. Eh. Easy schedule next year does not mean Super Bowl. Yes, we aren't a joke like the Cowboys, but the 2021 Cowboys had an easy schedule and then got exposed in round one. Same could happen with us. No, it doesn't guarantee Super Bowl. It should guarantee playoffs. Oh, okay, okay, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, yeah, I remember. I do remember. Also though, wasn't that what year did LT tear his ACL and not be able to play? Or Philip Rivers played with a torn ACL or something. In 1984, Dan Marino ran up against the best defense ever. No way he was going to win. Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's you're on the Mount Rushmore. That I agree with. Yes. Yes. So much hate in your heart, Frisco. So much hate in your heart. All right, y'all. I'm gonna get out of here. I appreciate you. It's always good to come on and rap with you guys. Before I get out of here, I do want to shout out the sponsor. It's been the sponsor for 6 months now. Underdog, go check them out. Links in the description. Get your deposit match at 50% up to $1,000. Always got awesome promos going. Just because the NFL season's over doesn't mean you still can't have fun with Underdog. I know I am. I don't know as much about the NBA as I used to, but I'm still having fun with it. I love my more or lesses. So go have fun with Underdog for sure. And if you do, use promo code LSS or the link in the description. I appreciate you all for tapping in. Much love. Talk to you very, very soon. Peace.